Disclaimer: this story explores mature emotional themes including trust, vulnerability, and relationship dynamics. While it does not contain explicit material, viewer discretion is advised. It started off like any other birthday I'd had since turning 30, low expectations, a decent dinner, a few friends over, and my husband, Ethan, doing his best to make me feel special while secretly forgetting to defrost the cake. I'd told him I didn't want a big deal, but let's be honest. What woman doesn't want a little surprise, a little sparkle? I just didn't expect this kind of surprise. Not the kind that would keep me up at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every glance, wondering if I had imagined it or if something in my marriage had just quietly cracked. There were 8 of us. Adults. Married, dating, single, divorced. Standard suburban mix. Ethan's friends had come over straight from work, loosened ties, loosened tongues. A few drinks in, and everyone was laughing louder than they probably should have been. The kind of night that starts warm and cozy but slowly shifts, almost imperceptibly, like when the temperature drops just enough for your skin to notice. That's what it felt like, something subtle shifting. Let me give you the players. There was me, obviously, turning 35 and trying not to think too hard about it. Ethan, charming when he wants to be, a little too comfortable with silence when he doesn't. Then there was his best friend, Marcus, who I've always liked, maybe a little too much. Not in a romantic way, just in that he listens way, which sometimes feels rarer than it should. Jamie and Liz are married couple friends who thrive on oversharing. Nina, my old college roommate, newly single and fiercely unapologetic about it. And finally, Tyler and Drew, Ethan's coworkers, funny, quick-witted, the kind of guys who get real quiet when the room gets too serious. Dinner turned into drinks, drinks turned into shots. Someone put on music. Someone else suggested a game. It wasn't truth or dare, nothing that childish. It was something Ethan said they'd played at a bachelor party once. A kind of honesty game, he called it. But it was more than that. There were rules. Questions only. No follow-ups. Everyone had to answer. No skipping. It's fun, he promised, with that grin that tells me it's already not. At first, it was harmless. What's your most embarrassing moment? Have you ever had a crush on someone in this room? Everyone laughed, side-eyed each other, played along. Then the questions got heavier. Sharper. What's something your partner doesn't know about you? What's the worst thing you've ever done in a relationship? I watched the shift happen. The way the air in the room got heavier, like everyone was breathing in questions they didn't want to exhale. I started feeling it too, like I was no longer hosting a party but sitting in the middle of something I hadn't agreed to. Ethan looked relaxed. Too relaxed. Marcus kept glancing at me, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. And then someone asked me a question. That was when everything turned. But I'll get to that. Because the real story isn't just about a party game. It's about what happens when people stop pretending everything's fine. When the people closest to you let their masks slip, even for a second. It's about hearing something you can't unhear and wondering later if it was the truth or just a cruel joke dressed up as honesty. And that night at my birthday party, with candles still burning on the cake and empty glasses scattered like forgotten confessions, I heard something. Something I was never meant to hear. And nothing's been the same since. They asked me, if you could erase one moment from your relationship, what would it be? It was Liz who asked, a little too quickly, a little too casually, as if she'd been waiting for her turn with me. She had this half-smile on her face like she expected a safe answer, something cute. But I froze, because in that moment, my mind didn't reach for a minor disagreement or a silly fight over laundry. It went straight to that weekend 2 years ago. Ethan and I had taken a trip to the coast. We were supposed to reconnect. Things had been distant, a little hollow. He said it was work stress. I told myself I believed him. But the way he kept checking his phone when he thought I was asleep, the way he'd been so quiet during dinners, not cold, just absent. That trip felt like sitting next to someone I used to know, pretending the silence was comfortable. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I laughed too loud and said, that time Ethan tried to cook risotto and nearly set the kitchen on fire. Everyone chuckled. Ethan leaned back in his chair, pleased, like I'd passed some kind of test. But Marcus looked at me with this knowing frown, like he could see right through it. That's the thing about Marcus. He's not just Ethan's best friend, he's been part of our lives since before Ethan and I were even serious. Back then, I actually met Marcus first at a work event. We hit it off immediately, easy conversation, same sarcasm. I remember feeling disappointed when he told me he was introducing me to his best friend, thinking maybe I'd just missed something. Then Ethan walked in, confident, charming, and Marcus stepped back. And for the past 7 years, he's always been in the background. The friend. The observer. The guy who asks if I'm okay when Ethan doesn't notice I've gone quiet. I never gave it much thought. Or maybe I did, and just never let myself follow the thread. As the game went on, things only got more tangled. Jamie admitted to cheating in a past relationship. Tyler confessed he was in love with someone unavailable. Nina, not to be outdone, said she didn't believe in monogamy and never had. Ethan laughed at that, eyes flicking to me, then quickly away. My skin prickled. Something in me was alert now, scanning every reaction. I realized how easily people could hide behind laughter. And how easily we accept those performances, especially from the people we love. Then Marcus asked Ethan a question. If you had to pick one person in this room to be stranded with for a week, who would it be? It sounded innocent enough. But his tone had a blade in it. Ethan barely hesitated. Probably Nina, he said, grinning. She'd make it interesting. And that was it. A dumb, throwaway comment. Everyone laughed. But something sank in my stomach. It wasn't jealousy, it was realization. That maybe I wasn't as tuned into my husband as I thought. That maybe there were whole parts of him I no longer had access to. Later, while clearing glasses, Marcus stayed behind to help. The others were outside, still buzzing with alcohol and adrenaline. He handed me a wine glass, paused, and said, "Are you okay?" "Really?" I nodded. I lied. And then he said something I didn't know what to do with. "You didn't deserve that answer." He walked away before I could ask what he meant. But I knew. And suddenly, my birthday party didn't feel like a celebration anymore. It felt like the beginning of something unraveling, something that had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to come undone. I just didn't know how deep it would go, or how far I'd be willing to follow it. After everyone left, the house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't settle, it hovers like it's waiting. Ethan was loading the dishwasher, humming something tuneless, acting like nothing about tonight had been unusual. I watched him from across the room, wondering how he could be so at ease while I was still mentally stuck at the dinner table, replaying every glance, every answer, every crack in the facade we called our marriage. I kept hearing Marcus's voice. "You didn't deserve that answer." It rang louder than Ethan's laughter or Nina's provocations. Louder than my own forced giggle when I'd lied about the moment I'd erase. That comment, tossed off like a joke, had split something open. I wasn't just wondering if Ethan had changed. I was starting to realize I had too. I went to bed before him, hoping sleep would smooth the edges. But it didn't. Instead, I lay awake, listening to him moving around downstairs, texting someone. Probably work. Probably nothing. Probably something. I didn't ask. I didn't want to hear more half-truths delivered with that same confident smile. The next morning, I found Marcus's name in my notifications. Just a single message. "If you ever want to talk about anything, you can." He didn't need to say more. I felt the unspoken in every word. I typed and deleted a dozen replies before leaving it on read. Because if I started talking, I wasn't sure where it would end. For days after the party, I went through the motions. Work. Groceries. Small talk. Ethan acted like everything was normal, which only made it worse. The emotional disconnect was now impossible to ignore. He asked about dinner plans, not about me. He told me about meetings, not about us. I realized I was keeping a mental list of every moment he chose to be somewhere else, mentally, emotionally, maybe even physically. Then came the photos. Liz sent them in our group chat. Candid shots from the party. Laughing faces. Clinking glasses. Ethan with his arm casually draped around Nina's chair, not touching her, but close. Too close. I stared at the image longer than I should have. Was it nothing? Was it the angle? Or was it proof of a closeness I'd only just started to suspect? Later that night, I asked Ethan about the game. Not about Nina. Not about Marcus. Just the game. Where did you learn it? He shrugged. Marcus. He played it at that Vegas thing last year. I blinked. Marcus had introduced it? That didn't track. Marcus wasn't the type to stir things up for fun. He was quiet, observant, careful. If he brought that game into our house, he must have had a reason. That's when a new thought settled in, uneasy and sharp. What if the game wasn't spontaneous? What if it was intentional? A pressure test. An invitation to speak what no one dared to say. What if Marcus had seen something in our marriage long before I had, and the game was his way of forcing it into the open? And then there was Nina. I couldn't shake the way she'd watched Ethan during the game. It wasn't obvious, but there was an edge to her smiles, knowing, almost like they shared a secret. She was bold, confident, unattached. The kind of woman who wouldn't hesitate to test boundaries. The kind of woman who might have already crossed one. I started wondering if the real danger wasn't in what was said during the game, but in what was left unsaid. And I wasn't sure which was worse. Because secrets don't always scream. Sometimes they whisper. And right now, I was surrounded by whispers, trying to piece together which ones were warning signs, and which ones I'd been ignoring all along. One thing was certain. This wasn't over. Something had started at that table. And it was only getting louder. The night it all snapped didn't come with screaming or slamming doors. It came quietly, like pressure building in a sealed room, slowly sucking out the air until you don't realize you're choking until it's too late. It was Thursday. For days since the party. Ethan was late. Again. No call, no message. Just me, a lukewarm dinner, and his empty chair. I wasn't angry. I was past that. What I felt now was something closer to detachment, like watching a movie you've already seen, just waiting for the part where everything falls apart. I was clearing the table when my phone lit up. A message from Marcus. Are you sure you're okay? Something felt off. That game wasn't supposed to go there. There it was. A confession. Confirmation that I wasn't crazy. That the tension at that table wasn't in my head. That Ethan's answer about Nina hadn't just stung, it had meant something. I stared at the screen, thumbs hovering. Then, without thinking, I typed, "Did you know he'd say her name?" The 3 dots blinked, then disappeared. 5 minutes passed. 10. When Marcus finally replied, it was one word. Yes, that was the moment something cracked. Not a loud break, a quiet shift inside me. The kind that changes everything, even if no one sees it yet. I left the dishes in the sink and drove. I didn't know where I was going until I got there. Marcus's apartment was small, cluttered, and honest. He opened the door like he'd been waiting, like he knew I'd come. Neither of us said anything for a second. Then I asked, "Why did you let it happen?" He didn't pretend not to understand. He just exhaled and said, "Because I thought maybe you needed to see it." Finally, I sat down on his couch, heart pounding. I didn't know what I wanted. Answers? Comfort? A reason to leave Ethan that didn't feel like quitting? Marcus sat beside me, not close, not far. We were quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I've watched you carry that marriage alone for years." I didn't say anything because it wasn't my place. But that night, he showed you who he is. I just gave him the chance. I felt tears coming, but I didn't cry. Not yet. My voice was steady when I asked, "And what about you? Why are you really here?" His answer was quiet. Because I never stopped caring. Even when I shouldn't have. My chest tightened. Before I could respond, my phone rang. "Ethan." I didn't answer. I just watched it buzz, then go silent. Marcus looked at me, then away. And for the first time in days, I asked myself the real question, the one I'd been avoiding since that party. Do I still love him? Or am I just afraid to leave? When I got home, Ethan was waiting in the living room. His eyes were bloodshot. He stood up fast, like he'd rehearsed this moment. Where were you? I didn't answer. Are you serious? You disappear and don't pick up, and I'm supposed to be okay with that. I stared at him. Something in his voice cracked, but I couldn't tell if it was anger or fear. Maybe both. Then I said it. Are you sleeping with Nina? The silence that followed was unbearable. He didn't deny it, not right away. He blinked, processed, recalculated. That pause told me everything. It's not what you think, he finally said. But that's the thing. It never is. And now, the question wasn't whether we could fix this. It was whether I wanted to. Ethan didn't chase me when I walked out of the room. He just stood there, silent, letting the weight of my question hang in the air like a broken chandelier. Not denying. Not confirming. Just watching me. I packed a bag. Not everything, just enough to leave without explanation. Toothbrush. Jeans. The sweater I always wore when I didn't want to be seen. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. It was past midnight when I drove back to Marcus's apartment. I didn't call. I didn't text. But when I knocked, he opened the door like he'd been waiting all along. He didn't ask any questions. He just moved aside and let me in. I dropped my bag, sat on his couch, and finally let the tears come. No words, no pretense. Just quiet, exhausted sobs while he sat beside me, steady as always. When I could breathe again, he handed me a glass of water. I drank, cleared my throat. Then I asked the one question that had been sitting in the back of my mind since the party. Why her? Marcus didn't answer right away. He stared at the floor, fingers laced tight. Then he said, "You're asking the wrong question." I blinked. What does that mean? He looked at me, finally. I don't think it was about Nina. I froze. Then what was it? He hesitated, then reached behind him, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen a few times. When he handed it to me, I didn't know what I was looking at until I did. It was a photo. A blurry, zoomed-in screenshot from Liz's social post. The party. Our dining room. The moment Ethan had said Nina's name. But Marcus had cropped it on something else entirely. My face. And Marcus's face. The way we were looking at each other. It hit me all at once. We were the story. I couldn't breathe for a second. What are you saying? Marcus didn't blink. I think he knows. A chill ran through me. You think Ethan planned that game? To test us? Marcus didn't say yes. He didn't have to. Suddenly, every moment of that night twisted into something darker. The specific questions. The targeted answers. Ethan's fake ease. Marcus's guilt. It wasn't a spontaneous party game. It was a trap. He wanted to see if there was something between us. And worse, maybe there was. I stood up, heart racing. My whole body felt electric, like I'd just touched something I wasn't supposed to. Nothing's happened, I whispered, almost to myself. Marcus nodded. I know. But we both knew that wasn't the whole truth. Nothing physical, sure. But emotionally? Emotionally, we'd been circling each other for years. Careful. Respectful. Safe. Until now. I grabbed my bag, suddenly desperate to get out, to clear my head. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. From an unknown number. You and Marcus make a cute couple. Shame it took me throwing a party to find out. I stared at it, my blood turning cold. Ethan. He knew. And worse, he'd set it up. Every move, every question, every sip of wine and glance across the table, it hadn't been spontaneous. It had been strategy. And now I wasn't just questioning my marriage. I was questioning the man I'd lived with for 7 years. Because Ethan wasn't just suspicious. He'd been watching. And now I had no idea what he'd do next. I didn't sleep that night. The message from Ethan kept playing in my mind like a looped recording, calm, smug, and cruel. You and Marcus make a cute couple. Shame it took me throwing a party to find out. It wasn't just the words. It was what they meant. He hadn't just suspected something, he'd been waiting for confirmation. And now I was the one caught in a trap he'd built, with just enough rope to hang myself emotionally. At dawn, I drove home. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the street was still wrapped in that eerie blue stillness that comes before the day explodes into noise. I expected silence. Maybe an empty house. But Ethan was there, waiting in the kitchen like he had nowhere else to be. He didn't speak right away, just looked at me, leaning on the counter like this was some casual conversation. Like we weren't standing in the ashes of something we both helped burn down. I just wanted to see how far it would go, he said finally, voice low and eerily calm. Turns out, it didn't take much. I set my bag down. So this was all some test? A setup? No, he said. It was a confirmation. You've been slipping away for months. Maybe longer. I just stopped pretending not to notice. I swallowed hard. And Nina? He gave a bitter smile. She was part of the plan. Nothing happened. She just owed me a favor. I blinked, stunned. You used her. She was happy to play along. You weren't the only one wondering about your marriage. I felt sick. This wasn't just mistrust. It was manipulation. Deep, premeditated manipulation. You could have talked to me, I said, voice cracking. We could have tried. We did try, he said sharply. You checked out a long time ago. You think I didn't notice how often you looked at Marcus when you thought I wasn't watching. I stood there, speechless. Because he wasn't wrong. I had looked at Marcus differently. But it hadn't come from malice. It came from being unseen. I wasn't cheating, I whispered. Not in the way you think. Doesn't matter, he said. You left me before you ever walked out the door. That hit like a punch to the chest. I could have fought back. Could have yelled, cried, blamed. But instead, I felt something shift inside, this strange mix of guilt and relief. You're right, I said, almost to myself. He looked up, surprised. I've been gone for a long time. I just didn't want to admit it. There it was. The truth. Heavy. Final. He exhaled, leaned back against the counter. So what now? I didn't answer right away. I just walked to the living room, looked around at the life we'd built, a life that had become more performance than partnership. Then I turned to him. We end this the right way. No more games. He nodded once. No sarcasm. No clever jabs. Just quiet acceptance. I left that afternoon. No dramatic scene. No slamming doors. Just a goodbye between two people who had finally stopped pretending. Marcus met me later, not at his place, but at a quiet coffee shop halfway between both our lives. I told him everything. He listened. He didn't press. When I finished, he just said, "So, what do you want?" I looked at him, this man who had been the safe harbor I never let myself fully sail toward. And for the first time in years, I said, I don't know. But I want to figure it out without lying to myself. We didn't kiss. We didn't make promises. We just sat there, two people finally free from the weight of everything unsaid. But just as the moment settled, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Liz. You need to see this. And beneath it, a video file. Titled, The Night of the Game. Backup recording. My heart stopped. Because maybe the game wasn't over yet. I didn't open the video right away. I stared at the screen for a good 5 minutes, heart pounding, my thumb hovering just above the play button. Liz hadn't said anything else, just, you need to see this. That was enough. Marcus watched me silently, sensing the weight of it. Finally, I took a breath, tapped the screen, and let the truth play out. The video was grainy, recorded from Liz's phone on the mantel. It captured the entire living room, me, Ethan, our friends. The moment we started the game. The laughter. The teasing. Then the questions. And then came that moment when Ethan said Nina's name. But this time, I saw something I hadn't before. His eyes weren't on Nina. They were on me. And not just watching me, watching my reaction. It was calculated. Intentional. He wasn't answering the question for the group. He was answering it for me. Delivering a blow. Not confessing love. Sending a message. I paused the video, staring at his frozen expression on the screen. Cold. Flat. Expectant. This wasn't about Nina. It never was. It was about control. Ethan knew he was losing me, and instead of reaching out, he decided to trap me, provoke me, shame me. He wanted to flip the guilt. And somehow I'd almost let him. Marcus leaned over. He wanted you to hate yourself. I nodded. So I wouldn't hate him. Suddenly, everything clicked. The silence. The manipulation. The performative apologies. Ethan hadn't just lost interest in the marriage, he wanted to punish me for emotionally detaching before he did. I closed the video and looked at Marcus. I'm done. Not just done with Ethan. Done carrying blame that didn't belong to me. Done shrinking myself to avoid conflict. Done second-guessing my worth. Later that day, I met Ethan at a neutral spot to talk through the final details. The divorce. The logistics. I stayed calm, kind, even. But I didn't waver. He tried to slip back into charm, offering a drink, suggesting we could maybe go to therapy. But the mask didn't work anymore. I saw through it. I'm not angry anymore, I told him. But I'm not staying just because we've been at this a long time. He looked at me for a long time, like he finally realized I wasn't bluffing. That's it, he said. Yeah, I said. That's it. We parted without drama. I moved into a smaller place, a quiet one-bedroom near my sister's. I kept the dog. He didn't ask for her. That said a lot. As for Marcus, we didn't jump into anything. We took our time. Rebuilding, not rushing. Just two people figuring things out, this time with honesty and space to breathe. And me? I learned that sometimes the most painful endings are the ones that set you free. That just because a relationship lasts a long time doesn't mean it's the right one. That love, real love, isn't about proving loyalty under pressure. It's about safety, respect, reciprocity. I didn't get a perfect ending, but I got a true one. And that was more than enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another episode. Thanks for watching.